The man who lost everything, Blake Harrison, stood in his San Francisco penthouse, watching the fog roll across the Golden Gate Bridge. At 35, he had everything money could buy. 3 successful tech companies, a fortune that placed him on every billionaire list, properties across 5 continents. But none of it mattered anymore. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window showed a man who had stopped living 3 years ago. That was when the car accident took away his wife, Jennifer, and their 5-year-old son, Tyler, in one terrible moment. Since then, Blake had buried himself in work, building his empire higher, while his heart remained frozen in that moment of loss. But lately something had changed. Walking through parks and seeing fathers with their children became unbearable. He wanted to be a father again. He needed it. Yet the thought of falling in love, of risking that kind of pain again, seemed impossible. His lawyer, Howard Banks, had presented him with a solution: a contract. A surrogate mother who would carry his child for 9 months, then leave. No emotions. No complications. Just a transaction. Blake picked up the folder from his desk. Inside was a photograph of a young woman with auburn hair and green eyes that seemed to hold both sadness and strength. Rachel Monroe, age 28. Art school graduate. Currently working 3 jobs to pay for her mother's cancer treatment. Perfect, he thought coldly. She needed money desperately enough to agree to his terms. The artist with no choice, across the country in Brooklyn. Rachel Monroe sat in her tiny studio apartment, staring at medical bills spread across her kitchen table. The numbers blurred together. $200,000 for the experimental treatment that could save her mother's life. $200,000 she would never have. She had sold every painting in her small gallery show. Maxed out credit cards. Borrowed from friends until they had nothing left to give. Her mother, Angela, was getting weaker every day, and time was running out. The agency's offer letter sat on top of the pile. $1 million to be a surrogate mother? The amount seemed unreal. More money than she would earn in 20 years. Enough to save her mother and start over. But the terms were brutal. 9 months of isolation, no contact with friends, living in the client's home, complete surrender of all parental rights after birth. Never seeing the child again, Rachel's phone rang. It was the hospital. Ms. Monroe, your mother's next treatment is scheduled for Monday. We need the payment by Friday, or we will have to postpone. Rachel closed her eyes. She thought of her mother's gentle smile. Her encouraging words when Rachel's art career struggled, her unwavering belief that everything would work out. I will have it, Rachel heard herself say. I promise. After hanging up, she picked up the agency's card and dialed. When 2 worlds collide, 3 days later, Rachel stood in the lobby of the Pinnacle Tower, the most expensive building in San Francisco. Her hand shook as she smoothed down her only decent dress. A simple navy blue piece she had worn to gallery openings. A private elevator took her to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a penthouse that looked like something from an architecture magazine. White marble floors. Modern art on every wall. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing the entire city. Blake Harrison stood by the window, his back to her. He wore an expensive charcoal suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. When he turned, Rachel was struck by how handsome he was, but also how cold his blue eyes seemed. Ms. Monroe, he said, his voice flat. Please sit, no greeting, no smile. Just business. Rachel sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her entire apartment. Blake sat across from her, sliding a thick contract across the glass table. Everything is outlined here, he began. $1 million? Half paid immediately upon contract signing, transferred directly to the hospital for your mother's treatment. The second half paid after you deliver a healthy child. Rachel's throat felt tight. And the baby will be mine, completely. You will have no rights, no contact. After birth, you will leave and never return. The words felt like ice water. Rachel looked down at the contract, at all the legal terms that reduced 9 months of carrying a child to a business transaction. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Blake's jaw tightened. That is not your concern. Do you accept the terms or not? Rachel thought of her mother in that hospital bed, growing weaker. She picked up the pen. Their fingers brushed as Blake handed her the contract. For just a second, Rachel felt warmth, a connection that seemed to surprise them both. Blake pulled his hand back quickly, his expression hardening again. Rachel signed her name, sealing the deal that would change both their lives forever. The golden cage of the penthouse became Rachel's new home. Blake showed her to a guest suite that was bigger than her entire apartment. Everything was pristine, modern, expensive, and completely impersonal. "Mrs. Henderson will prepare your meals," Blake said, gesturing to an older woman who nodded politely. "Dr. Williams will visit twice a week for checkups. You have full access to the gym, library, and rooftop garden. My office is off limits." "When will the procedure happen?" Rachel asked. "Next week. Dr. Williams is the best fertility specialist in the country." Blake turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Ms. Monroe, I need you to understand something. This is a contractual arrangement. Nothing more. I expect you to remember that." His words stung, though Rachel told herself they should not. She was here for her mother. For the money. Nothing else mattered. That first night, Rachel stood on the rooftop garden, looking at the city lights below. She felt completely alone. She called her mother, who was already in the hospital receiving her first treatment. "Oh, honey, the doctors say this new treatment is already helping." Angela's voice was weak but hopeful. "However, did you get the money?" "I found a good job, Mom," Rachel lied. "A really good job. I will be traveling for work, so I cannot visit for a while, but I will call every day." After hanging up, Rachel let herself cry. She had just signed away 9 months of her life and a child she had not even conceived yet. She was living in a beautiful prison with a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. But her mother would live. That had to be enough. The first cracked 2 weeks later. After the successful embryo transfer, Rachel began experiencing morning sickness. She spent most mornings in the bathroom and forced herself to eat the carefully prepared meals Mrs. Henderson left for her. Blake was rarely home. He left before dawn and returned after midnight. They passed each other like strangers in the hallway. He never asked how she felt, never showed any interest in her well-being. Rachel spent her days painting in the rooftop garden, trying to lose herself in art she had not picked up a brush in months, too stressed about money to create. Now, with time and financial pressure lifted, her creativity began flowing again. One afternoon, Blake came home early. He found her on the rooftop, covered in paint. Working on a large canvas of the Golden Gate Bridge emerging from fog, he stopped, staring at the painting. "You are talented." Rachel turned, surprised. It was the first personal comment he had made in 2 weeks. "Thank you," she said quietly. Blake stepped closer, studying the painting. "My wife used to paint. Not as well as this, but she loved it." It was the first time he had mentioned his past. Rachel saw the pain flash across his face before he caught himself and the cold mask returned. "Ate the baby," he said abruptly. "Dr. Williams confirms the pregnancy is progressing well." "Yes, everything is fine." Blake nodded and walked away, but Rachel had seen it. A crack in his armor. A glimpse of the man behind the ice, as she watched him disappear back into the penthouse. Rachel realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. This would not stay simple. Her heart was already beginning to betray her. Invisible in plain sight, 3 months passed like a slow dream. Rachel's belly began to show, a small curve that reminded her every day of what she carried. Blake's child. A baby she would hold for mere moments, before handing over forever. The penthouse felt like a museum. Beautiful, but lifeless. Mrs. Henderson came and went silently, leaving meals that Rachel ate alone at the massive dining table designed for 12. The television played movies she barely watched. Books filled entire shelves, but the words blurred together. Blake remained a ghost in his own home. Some weeks Rachel saw him only twice. He would walk past her in the hallway, nod briefly, and disappear into his office, or leave for another business trip. No conversations. No questions about how she felt. Just cold, professional distance. Rachel called her mother every evening. Angela's health was improving dramatically. The experimental treatment was working. Her voice grew stronger each week, filled with hope and plans for the future. "When you finish this mysterious job, you must come home," Angela said one night. "I want to cook for you. I want to hear all about your adventures." Rachel pressed her hand against her belly, feeling the first flutter of movement. "I will, Mom. I promise." After hanging up, she sat in the dark living room, tears sliding down her cheeks. She was saving her mother's life, but losing pieces of herself in the process. The night. Everything changed. It happened on a Tuesday night in her 4th month. Rachel could not sleep. The baby was active, rolling and kicking, making rest impossible. She wandered to the kitchen at 2 in the morning, hoping warm milk would help. The lights were already on. Blake sat at the kitchen counter in sweatpants and a faded Stanford t-shirt, so different from his usual suits. A glass of whiskey sat untouched in front of him. He looked exhausted, broken even, staring at his phone screen. Rachel almost turned back, but he looked up and saw her. "Could not sleep?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "The baby's very active tonight," Rachel said, one hand on her belly. Something flickered in Blake's eyes. "May I?" He gestured toward her stomach. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. Blake stood and crossed to her, his hand hovering uncertainly before gently touching her belly. His palm was warm. At that moment, the baby kicked hard, right against his hand. Blake's breath caught. His eyes widened with wonder, and for the first time since Rachel met him, he smiled. A real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "That is incredible," he whispered. "So strong already?" "She kicks all night," Rachel said softly. "I think she might be a soccer player." Blake's hand remained on her belly, feeling each movement. I do not know yet. But it feels like a she." They stood there in the dim kitchen light, his hand on her stomach, connected through the life growing between them. The moment stretched, intimate and raw. Blake looked up, meeting Rachel's eyes. For the first time, she saw past the ice. She saw grief so deep it had become part of him. Pain that had carved out his insides and left him hollow. "I had a son," Blake said suddenly, his voice breaking. "Tyler. He was 5. The happiest kid you ever met. Loved dinosaurs and finger painting and terrible knock-knock jokes." Rachel's heart clenched. "What happened?" "Car accident. 3 years ago. A drunk driver ran a red light." Blake's hand trembled against her belly. "My wife Jennifer died instantly. Tyler held on for 2 days. I sat by his hospital bed, holding his little hand, begging him to stay. But he slipped away." Tears streamed down Blake's face. He made no effort to hide them. "I wanted to die too," he continued. "For months, I did not care if I lived or died. Work was the only thing that kept me breathing. Building companies, making money, it numbed the pain." Rachel covered his hand with hers. "I am so sorry. I thought I could do this," Blake said. "I thought I could have another child without feeling anything. Keep it simple, transactional. But watching you, seeing you carry my baby, feeling her kick..." His voice broke completely. "I am terrified, Rachel. Terrified of loving her and losing her too." Rachel stepped closer, wrapping her arms around him. Blake collapsed against her, his shoulders shaking with sobs he had probably held back for years. She held him, this broken billionaire who had everything except what mattered most. "You will not lose her," Rachel whispered fiercely. "This baby is going to be healthy and strong and loved. You deserve to be happy again, Blake. Tyler would want that." Blake pulled back, looking at her with red, swollen eyes. "How did you get so wise?" "I am not wise. I am just a girl who understands loss." Rachel smiled sadly. "My father died when I was 12. Cancer. I watched him fade away slowly. My mother never remarried. She said some loves are once in a lifetime." "Do you believe that?" Blake asked. Rachel hesitated. "I used to. Now I think maybe hearts can heal if we let them." Blake's gaze dropped to her lips. The air between them changed, charged with something neither had allowed themselves to feel. He leaned closer, and Rachel's breath caught. The moment shattered, when both their phones buzzed simultaneously. The ghost from the past, Blake, checked his phone first, its expression darkening. "Security alert," Someone is at the gate claiming to know you. Rachel's stomach dropped. She looked at her phone. 3 missed calls from a number she had blocked months ago. A text message appeared. I know where you are, babe. We need to talk, Trevor, Rachel whispered. Who is Trevor? Blake's voice went cold and protective. My ex-boyfriend. We broke up 8 months ago when my mother got sick. He said he could not handle the stress. Rachel's hand shook. He has been trying to contact me for money. I changed my number, but he must have tracked me down. Blake was already on his phone. Security, do not let him pass the gate. I am coming down, Blake. Wait. What? Rachel grabbed his arm. He can be dangerous when he is angry. Please, just let security handle it. No one threatens you while you are under my roof. Blake's eyes blazed with an intensity Rachel had never seen. Stay here. He left before Rachel could argue. She watched through the security monitor as Blake strode out to the gate where Trevor stood, clearly drunk, yelling at the guards. Trevor Kane looked exactly as Rachel remembered. Handsome in a rough way, with messy blonde hair and an arrogant smirk. But his eyes held meanness she had once overlooked. Where is Rachel? Trevor shouted as Blake approached. I know she is here. I have friends who work at that agency. They told me everything. She is pregnant with some rich guy's baby for $1 million. You need to leave, Blake said calmly. Now, Trevor laughed bitterly. You think you can buy her? Rachel was mine first. We were together for 2 years. I deserve some of that money. You deserve nothing. Rachel made her choice. Respect it. Respect. Trevor's face twisted. That girl owes me. I supported her art career for months before everything went bad. This is payback time. Blake stepped closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Listen carefully. You will never contact Rachel again. You will not come near this building. You will disappear from her life completely. If you do not, I have lawyers who will bury you in lawsuits until you have nothing left. Trevor sneered. Typical rich guy. Thinks money solves everything. Blake said quietly. But it helps. Security, if this man returns, call the police immediately. Blake turned to walk away. Trevor lunged forward, trying to push past the guards. Rachel, get out here. Blake spun and caught Trevor's arm, twisting it behind his back in one smooth motion. Touch her, threaten her, even think about her again, and I will make your life a living nightmare. Do we understand each other? Trevor yelped in pain, nodding frantically. Blake released him, and the guards escorted him off the property. When Blake returned to the penthouse, he found Rachel waiting anxiously in the living room. Is he gone? She asked. Yes, and he will not be back. Blake crossed to her, his hands gentle as they touched her shoulders. Are you all right? I am fine. Rachel's voice cracked. Thank you for protecting me. No one has ever done that before. Blake's thumb brushed her cheek. Rachel, I know this started as a contract. I know I have been cold and distant. But I need you to know something. You are not just carrying my child. You matter. Your safety, your happiness, they matter to me. Rachel looked up at him, her heart pounding. Blake. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, his lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle, searching. Full of questions and promises neither dared speak aloud. Rachel kissed him back, her hands sliding up to his neck. The kiss deepened, months of loneliness and longing pouring out from both of them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. This complicates everything, Rachel whispered. I know, Blake said, resting his forehead against hers. I know, and I do not care anymore. Crossing the line the next morning, everything felt different. Blake did not leave early for work. Instead, he made breakfast with Rachel, laughing as she burned the toast and he salvaged scrambled eggs that were barely edible. We are disasters in the kitchen, Rachel giggled. We should probably keep Mrs. Henderson employed, Blake agreed, smiling in a way that made him look 10 years younger. Over the following weeks, the walls between them crumbled completely. Blake started coming home for dinner. They watched movies together, his arm around her shoulders. He attended her doctor appointments, holding her hand during ultrasounds, his eyes glued to the screen showing their daughter. Yes, daughter. Dr. Williams confirmed it at the 20-week appointment. Blake cried happy tears for the first time in years. A little girl, he whispered, kissing Rachel's forehead. We are having a little girl. Rachel felt her heart breaking and healing simultaneously. She was falling in love with Blake. Deeply, completely, irreversibly. And she was terrified because in 5 months, the contract said she had to walk away from both him and their daughter forever. One night, lying in bed together, Blake's hand resting on her swollen belly, Rachel finally spoke the truth. I cannot do it. She whispered into the darkness. I cannot give her up. I cannot leave you. Blake turned to face her, his eyes serious. Then do not. Stay. Be her mother. Be with me. The contract does not matter anymore. But what if this is just pregnancy hormones? What if when she is born you realize you do not really want me here? Blake took her face in his hands. Rachel Monroe, I've been dead inside for 3 years. You brought me back to life. You made me believe I could be happy again. I love you. Not because you are carrying my child. Because you are strong and kind and talented and brave. Because you make me laugh. Because when I look at you, I see my future. Rachel's tears spilled over. I love you too. So much it scares me. Then be scared with me, Blake whispered. We will figure it out together. They kissed as their daughter kicked between them. As if celebrating the moment, her parents finally stopped fighting what their hearts had known all along. Everything should have been perfect. But perfection never lasts. 3 days later, Rachel would disappear, and Blake would learn that love sometimes means making the hardest choice of all. The morning after Rachel woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom, windows, and Blake's arm wrapped protectively around her growing belly. For a moment, everything felt perfect. She had found love in the most unexpected place. The baby kicked gently, responding to her father's touch even in sleep. Then her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from the hospital. Miss Monroe, your mother has taken a sudden turn. Please call immediately. Rachel's heart stopped. She carefully moved Blake's arm and grabbed the phone, stepping into the hallway to call. This is Dr. Patel, a kind voice answered. Ms. Monroe, your mother experienced complications from the treatment last night. She is stable now, but she is asking for you. She knows something is wrong. She keeps saying you have been lying to her about where you are. Rachel's blood ran cold. I will be there as soon as possible. She hung up and leaned against the wall, her mind racing. Her mother was getting suspicious. The lies were catching up with her. And suddenly, all the joy from the past few weeks felt fragile. Built on a foundation of secrets and contracts, Blake found her there 10 minutes later, already dressed in his suit for a morning meeting. What is wrong? He asked immediately, reading her face. She had complications. She wants to see me. Rachel's hands shook. Blake, she does not know about any of this. She thinks I am traveling for work. If I show up 7 months pregnant, how do I explain? Blake pulled her close. Tell her the truth. Tell her everything. The truth that I sold my body to have a stranger's baby for money? That I signed away all my rights? Rachel pulled back, anxiety flooding her. What kind of daughter does that make me? The kind who would sacrifice everything to save her mother's life, Blake said firmly. Rachel, you are not ashamed of what you did. Neither am I. We found each other in the middle of something complicated, and we are making it work. Are we? Rachel whispered. Blake, we have only been together for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of pretending the contract does not exist, but it does. I signed legal documents. What if your lawyers say I cannot just decide to keep her now? Blake's jaw tightened. Those lawyers work for me. The contract is void if I say it is. But what if I am making a mistake? What if I am so scared of losing my mother that I am clinging to you and this baby as replacements? Rachel's voice rose. What if this is not real? Blake stepped back as if she had slapped him. You think my feelings are not real? I think we are both broken people who found comfort in each other. But comfort is not the same as love. Not the kind that lasts forever. Rachel, I told you I love you. I meant it. You also told me this was just a contract. That I should never expect anything more. Which Blake am I supposed to believe? The words hung between them, sharp and painful. Blake's phone rang. His assistant, reminding him about the board meeting he could not miss. I have to go, he said quietly. But we are not done with this conversation. After he left, Rachel sat on the bed, her hands on her belly, and cried. She was 7 months pregnant with a man's baby, a man she had known for only 7 months total. She had fallen in love with him, yes. But was that enough? Was love that grew from a business arrangement real? By afternoon, Rachel had made her decision. Disappearing act, Blake returned from his meeting to find the penthouse empty. Rachel's clothes were gone. Her paintings removed from the walls. The only thing left was a note on the kitchen counter, written in her distinctive handwriting. Blake, I need time to think. To figure out who I am outside of this arrangement. I am going to see my mother and tell her the truth. After the baby is born, I will contact you. I promise she will be safe and healthy, but I cannot do this anymore. The confusion, the fear, the wondering if what we have is real, or just two lonely people holding on to each other. I am sorry, Rachel. Blake read the note 3 times, his hands shaking. Then he crumpled it and threw it across the room, roaring with frustration and pain. She left. She actually left. He grabbed his phone and called her number. It went straight to voicemail. He called again. And again, nothing. Howard, he barked into the phone to his lawyer. I need you to find someone now. 2 weeks of hell. 14 days passed like 14 years. Blake barely slept, barely ate. He had private investigators scouring the country. He called every hospital in New York and expanded to neighboring states. Nothing. Rachel had vanished completely. His office became a war room covered with maps. Phone records and grainy security footage from the building showing Rachel leaving with a single suitcase. She had paid cash for everything after that, leaving no digital trail. Blake stared at ultrasound photos tacked to his wall. Their daughter. Somewhere out there, Rachel was carrying their daughter, and he had no idea if they were safe. What if something goes wrong during delivery? He whispered to the empty room. What if she needs me, and I am not there? His mother called from Seattle, worried about him. Old friends reached out, concerned by his absence from social events. Blake ignored them all. Nothing mattered except finding Rachel. On day 15, his phone rang at 3 a.m. An unknown number? Blake Harrison? A woman's voice, older, kind. Yes, who is this? My name is Angela Monroe. I am Rachel's mother. Blake sat up straight, his heart pounding. Is she all right? Is the baby all right? They are both fine. Rachel gave birth 2 days ago. A healthy baby girl, 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Angela paused. Mr. Harrison, my daughter told me everything. The contract, the money, all of it. Blake's throat closed up. Where are they? A small town on the Oregon coast. Sunset Bay. Rachel did not want me to call you, but I think you deserve to know. Angela's voice softened. She is scared, Mr. Harrison. Scared that you only want the baby, not her. Scared that she was just a transaction to you. That is not true, Blake said hoarsely. I love her. I love them both. Then you need to come here and tell her that. Because right now, she is planning to disappear again. To raise your daughter alone, rather than share her with someone who might not love her mother? Jella gave him the address. Blake was in his car before the call ended. The moment everything changed, Sunset Bay was tiny. A fishing village with one main street and houses scattered along rocky cliffs overlooking the Pacific. Blake drove through town at dawn, his GPS leading him to a small blue cottage perched on a hillside. He sat in his car for 10 minutes, terrified. What if Rachel refused to see him? What if she had already left? What if she truly did not want him in their daughter's life? Finally, he forced himself out of the car and walked to the front door. Before he could knock, it opened. Angela Monroe stood there, thin woman in her 50s with Rachel's green eyes and warm smile. Mr. Harrison, come in. The cottage was cozy, filled with morning light. Paintings covered every wall, all Rachel's work. And there, in a wooden rocking chair by the window, sat Rachel. She looked exhausted and beautiful. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She wore an oversized sweater and leggings. And in her arms, wrapped in a yellow blanket, was the tiniest, most perfect baby Blake had ever seen. Rachel looked up, her eyes widening. "Blake?" He crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to his knees beside the rocking chair. "You had her. You had our daughter 2 days ago. Here at home with a midwife." Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "I am sorry I did not tell you. I was afraid." Blake looked at the baby. She had a tuft of dark hair like his, but Rachel's delicate features. Her tiny hand curled against Rachel's chest and she made soft sleeping sounds. "Can I hold her?" Blake asked, his voice breaking. Rachel hesitated, then carefully transferred the baby into his arms. Blake cradled his daughter, supporting her head like he remembered from when Tyler was born. The baby stirred, opening her eyes for just a moment. They were blue, unfocused, staring up at him. Blake began to cry, silent tears streaming down his face as he looked at this miracle. This second chance he thought he would never have. "Hello, sweet girl," he whispered. "I am your daddy. I have been waiting to meet you." The baby yawned and settled against his chest. Blake looked up at Rachel, his vision blurred with tears. "I love you," he said. "Not because you gave me this incredible gift. I love you because you are stubborn and talented and fierce. Because you challenge me. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is seeing your smile." Rachel's tears fell freely now. "Blake, I was so scared. Scared that once you had her, you would not need me anymore." "Need you?" Blake laughed through his tears. "Rachel, I am terrified every single day that you will realize you are too good for me. That you will see I am just a broken man who got lucky enough to find you." He shifted the baby to one arm and reached for Rachel's hand with the other. "I do not want to raise her without you. I do not want to live without you. These past 2 weeks have been torture." "I know," Rachel sobbed. "I missed you every single second. But I had to know if I could do this alone. If I was strong enough. And are you?" Rachel looked at their daughter, sleeping peacefully in Blake's arms. "Yes, but I do not want to. Blake, I want us to be a family. A real family. Not because of a contract or because of her, but because we choose each other every single day." Blake stood carefully, the baby still secure in his arms, and leaned down to kiss Rachel. It was soft and sweet and tasted like tears and promises. "Marry me," he whispered against her lips. Rachel pulled back, her eyes wide. "What?" "Marry me. Not next month or next year. Right now. Today." Blake smiled, that genuine smile that transformed his face. "There is a courthouse in town. Your mother can watch the baby. We can get married, tear up that horrible contract, and start over as a real family." "Blake, that is crazy." "I have been crazy since the moment you walked into my penthouse. Say yes, Rachel. Take a leap of faith with me." Rachel looked at her mother, who was watching from the kitchen doorway with tears in her eyes and a huge smile on her face. Then she looked at Blake, at the man holding their daughter with such love and wonder. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." 6 months later, the gallery opening in downtown San Francisco was packed. Rachel Monroe Harrison stood next to her husband, watching people admire her paintings. The collection was called Beginnings, and every piece told a story of transformation, love, and second chances. Blake had his arm around her waist, occasionally leaning down to kiss her temple. In the corner, Angela sat in a wheelchair, finally healthy and cancer-free. Holding 6-month-old Grace Harrison, who was trying to grab everything within reach. "Your work is stunning," a critic told Rachel. "The emotion in these pieces is remarkable. What inspired this collection?" Rachel looked at Blake, at their daughter, at her mother, at the family she almost lost by running away. "Love," she said simply. "Love I did not think I deserved, but found anyway." That night, after the guests left and the paintings were marked with sold signs, Blake and Rachel walked along the Embarcadero with Grace in a stroller. The Golden Gate Bridge glowed in the distance. "Do you ever regret it?" Blake asked. "How we started?" Rachel thought about the contract, the cold transaction that brought them together. Then she thought about everything that came after. The late-night talks, the first kiss, the moment Blake held their daughter for the first time. "Not for a second," she said. "Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places." Blake stopped walking and pulled her close, kissing her deeply. Grace cooed from her stroller, and they both laughed. "I love you, Rachel Harrison. I love you too. Always." They continued walking, a family built not on money or contracts, but on choice. Every single day, they chose each other, and that made all the difference. Blake had offered her $1 million for a baby, but in the end, he discovered she was the one thing money could never buy: real love, the kind that heals old wounds and creates new beginnings, the kind that transforms a transaction into forever. And Rachel learned that